Hello, my name is Jack Quinn, and I'm here to talk about inventions. The question I'm going to address today is, why did you do that? First, let's start with a brief definition of the word inventions. An invention is a process or a machine that did not exist previously. You may conjure thoughts about cures of cancer or an item that will let humans live on Mars. But however, when you think about it, inventing is so much more. When I think about inventing, I think of all the crazy, creative, and wacky things people do each day in response to the world they live in. So, for the purpose of this conversation, I will define inventing to include jury rigging. Now, jury rigging refers to makeshift repairs, like gadgets or thingamabobs that are made for necessity. Okay, so now that we've defined inventing, let's go back to our central question. Why did you do that? And I think that let's go back to our central question. Why did you do that? There are basically 3 reasons why people invent. First, to replicate something that they've seen or experienced. Second, to improve their lifestyle. And lastly, some people invent simply as a form of entertainment or to have fun. Now let's take a closer look at each of these 3 reasons for inventing. First, replication. Sometimes seeing things in nature can spur you to create something similar. For example, drinking cow's milk. One person saw a calf sucking on its mother's udders for milk. That curious man or woman took the project into their hands, literally, and squeezed on the udders to come up with the delicious liquid. On another note, replicated inventions can be as significant as the Wright brother airplanes. After observing a few birds in the sky and possibly a flying squirrel, they must have thought, why can't we do that? This series of events is what sparked the idea of human flight. Another replicated invention comes from the Native American Indians. While sitting on the edge of a river, they noticed a log float by. It did not take them long to develop the brilliant idea, which is now referred to as the canoe. Now, the second reason people invent is to improve their lifestyle. Many of you have heard of Steve Jobs, who is a perfectionist and a well-known entrepreneur and inventor. He created Apple because he was frustrated with the limits of computers. So he set out to redefine the rules for himself. The wheel on the first iPod was transformational. What used to be complicated was now intuitive. Just press and go. Then he moved on to the iPhone and wearable technology. Steve Jobs is a model for all inventors and will be remembered as an icon for improving everyone's lives in such a gigantic way. This next invention saved countless lives by mistake. William Greenbatch, while trying to make a box to record heart sounds, invented the pacemaker. If you don't know, a pacemaker is something that is placed in your chest to control abnormal heart rhythms. This invention soon became known as a lifesaver and is used in countless scenarios today. Finally, the third reason people invent is simply for enjoyment, or stated another way, just because they like to explore and play. Now, I spoke with some professional inventors to get their opinion. Gary Perringer invented the VisFlow pressurized surgical skin marker, which is basically a marker that doctors can use to write on their patients during surgery, and it won't clog with blood. It all started when he was in a trade show in California, and a doctor approached him with a problem. He said that his marker's pores kept getting clogged from the blood, and he was tired of constantly changing the tips of his marker. There was also a competing product where you had to squeeze the body of the marker so the blood would come shooting out the pores. His hands were getting tired because he was annoyed at squeezing so hard. So the inventor figured that it would be easier to create a plunger to press when the pores got clogged. His idea worked and is now being shipped to 40 countries worldwide. And he said that one of the main reasons inventions succeed is because they sell and fulfill a need in the marketplace. Just because you have an invention doesn't mean it will always be successful. Finally, Brian Greene invented Cardiff skates. I have a sample of his blades right here. This 3-wheel design made it easier for people of all ages to skate, and his goal was to make skating more stable, comfortable, and overall just more convenient. Also, he said that it takes hard work, teamwork, persistence, and a bit of luck for an invention to succeed. Finally, the last reason people invent is simply for enjoyment, or stated another way, just because they like to explore and play. This category of inventing can be appeal to me the most because it seems to be one of the main reasons people invent today. It can be wacky, and I found a couple of great examples. First, doggles. Ronnie DeLua made millions off of this worldwide hit. What a creative person. Thank God her creativity led to the better protection of her beloved dog's eyes. So while the sun rays penetrating my shabby glasses, at least Snorkel's eyes won't be blinded. Another perfect example of invent for fun was demonstrated when Rodrigo Narciso created the CH4, the chemical compound for methane, a natural gas. Can you guess where this is going? It was actually a small plastic device which clips onto your back pocket to measure the gas that you pass. It connects with an app to calculate how much you fart with how much you eat. Now between you and me, I can tell when the gas is passed, and I don't need a device for that. But this New York University grad set out to have fun inventing and came out with this dumb, smart gadget. Now I realized that none of these inventions seem to be critical to improving our existence, yet people thought them up and invented them. And that led me to wonder, perhaps the process of inventing could be as rewarding as the invention itself. So I conducted an experiment to figure out which was more important. Again, the process of inventing or the invention itself. I interviewed a whole bunch of people in streets, in shops, and even a guy or two in a bar. But don't worry, I was with my dad on that one. Basically, I asked them 3 questions. First, have you invented anything? Pretty straightforward, right? Well, it gets a little bit more complicated, because the second question only applied to them if they had said no to inventing anything. And I expanded on the definition of inventions to include jury rigging. The invention didn't have to be earth-shattering. It could just be something that they jury-rigged or a makeshift item with the things at hand. And finally, the third question was only for those that had invented or jury-rigged something. And I asked them, how did this invention make you feel? Now, most of the people I interviewed had invented some sort of thing, from things as basic as erasers that can hold in the back of your earrings, or to the less ethical, such as printing out your test answers on the inside of a Coke bottle. No matter the invention, everyone was extremely excited to share their personal successes with me. And when I had finally completed the interviews, I realized a few things. First, that when the definition of inventions was broadened to include jury rigging, most people said yes, that in fact they had invented something, and became much more engaged in the interview. Second, I realized that the personal satisfaction inventors feel seemed to be driven by the act of inventing and the success of inventing. For example, the girl that had invented the eraser for the back of your earring may have felt the same satisfaction as Steve Jobs. And finally, I realized that the people that were constantly inventing were making their lives that much better than the people that never invented. So therefore, we're more likely to feel more satisfied. And therefore, we're more likely to be satisfied. Now, most of you have learned the expression, necessity is the mother of invention. And I came across a great example of that. One guy I interviewed shared an incredible story with me. He was driving across the country in his Volkswagen Beetle when suddenly his car started to shake violently. At that point, he was in the middle of Death Valley with no one around to help him for hundreds of miles. In this type of car, there's something called a half-moon key, which basically holds the whole car together. When this piece tore apart, the car was not far behind. So when he took a nickel out of his pocket, he realized that the nickel was about half the size of, half of the nickel was about the size of the half-moon key. So it took him 2 days in the blazing hot sun to saw his nickel in half using a handsaw. When he placed the half nickel in his car, it held together until he reached the nearest service station. My point is that when I asked him how this invention made him feel, he responded by saying, "I felt like I had discovered fire." While this invention may not have been important to other people, it gave him an unparalleled sense of accomplishment. When I was younger, my dad created this invisible ball game. I was too young to catch a real ball, so I thought this game was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now the point is that we both felt enjoyment because of his invention, and it gave a sense of satisfaction for us both, because my dad and I spent endless hours playing this game. When I was writing this speech, I was frantically looking for stories of people that had jury-rigged something. I didn't even look for the obvious. It turns out that my own brother had jury-rigged something. When I was looking at his desk one day, I noticed a paperclip holding up an iPhone wire. When examining the situation more, I realized that the paperclip had been taped to the desk, and the iPhone wire had been inserted through the slip of the paperclip so that it wouldn't fall to the ground. I had finally realized that I had been surrounded by wonderful inventions. Finally, Joy Labs stunned the world with the invention kit called the Makey Makey. Basically, it's a device that turns ordinary items, like tables, chairs, and even dogs, into computer controllers. It connects these ordinary items to the Makey Makey using alligator clips, and then the Makey Makey transfers the electricity from those ordinary items to the computer using a USB. I found out that what was so great about this item was not what it did, but what people did with it. Creative people used it in so many different ways that the inventor had to put a label on the packaging that read, "Warning, users may start to believe that they can change the way the world works. Extended usage may result in creative confidence." In conclusion, we all have a choice when we leave here today. Think of yourselves as inventors and get out there and yank on some others. Or think of yourselves as non-inventors and do the exact same thing every day. For those of you who chose inventing, congratulations, you made the right choice. Now come talk to me during the break and tell me about what you invented. Thank you.